welcome back to the Sly Hooper Podcast, brought to you by the Blue Wire Hustle Podcast Network. New season approaching, new year. We've had 3 seasons now, officially, in a calendar year, which is wild if you count, obviously, the bubble playoffs ending in October of 2020, and then the season, the next season, this past season, the 2020-21 season, starting about some odd 70 days later in December of 2020, and then obviously we got this upcoming season. It's been a lot of basketball played. It's been a lot of drama too, especially one overarching saga that is the Ben Simmons and Philadelphia 76ers situation. And of course, I just wanted to knock my team out of the park with this podcast first. I plan to do a podcast episode on every NBA team this season. Obviously, I'm not going to get all of those teams in before the season starts, but I want to do an episode on each team as the season goes along. You know, we'll have some teams on the upswing probably during the season, teams on the downswing during the season, and hopefully, you know, we can catch some good episodes throughout the year. But I wanted to knock out the Philadelphia 76ers first because, again, they are my dumb, stupid team, and this obviously is the biggest story of the offseason, even though it's been talked about ad nauseum and the ground has been plowed over on this Ben Simmons content a bajillion times. But there's an actual basketball team to talk about, and I couldn't think of a better guest to have a therapeutic session about the Philadelphia 76ers than the co-host of the podcast. There is a lot going on. That's right. David Arroyo is back on the show for the second time. The first time he was on, it was a lot more optimistic in terms of talking about the Sixers, but a lot has happened between that episode back in February, and that's to say the least. He co-hosts his podcast with Tom Shively. It's a very good podcast. I was on there, and also gave my Talgo MVP. That's the acronym for the podcast. I gave my Talgo MVP on there. They didn't go anonymous. They went with the full names with everybody who submitted their vote, which I respect. But they're good dudes. It's a good podcast, and couldn't think of a better person to talk Philadelphia sports with than somebody who is from the area. We touch on everything, the Ben Simmons saga, and the actual team and what it will look like without Simmons. So without further ado, here is David Arroyo. All right, we are joined again for the second time on this podcast. We are joined by the co-host of the podcast There Is a Lot Going On, a.k.a. Talgo, David Arroyo, Sixer fan, tortured Sixer fan, well, tortured Philadelphia fan. I only get it from the Sixer side, but, you know, he is from the state of Pennsylvania and likes all the teams, Philadelphia. David, how are you doing, buddy?
Eagles, tough loss. Sixers are a mess. So could be better. It could be better, but overall doing pretty good. I just wish the Sixers were not giving me constant headaches.
Yeah, like Jalen Hurts said yesterday, though, you don't look at it, you just got to flush it and move on.
I guess.
I'm not going to say the whole thing. Don't want to put that image in people's heads, but, just life rolls on. You got to roll with the punches. And unfortunately, that's what, I don't know if it's unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure yet. I've gone back and forth on this, but that's what the Sixers will need to do, is roll with the punches. Sixers had their media day yesterday. And just full disclosure, I work overnights, and I wanted to try to get some sleep, like at least the 4 or 5 hours of sleep, because it was at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm on the West Coast, so that's 8 a.m. Pacific time for me. So I knew I was going to get little sleep. Couldn't sleep. Ended up watching at least the Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris media availability. I watched some of I left right around when Who did we sign to the 2-day? Aaron Henry was his name?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, he was on the summer league team. I kind of left right around there and finally went to bed. Mainly interested in the Doc and Daryl media availability for obvious reasons, and I would say it was about what we'd expect. They were not wine, but they really couldn't say much. I thought Daryl actually had some comments where, if you just read between the lines, he was actually pretty direct in what he's going to do as this Ben Simmons trade saga unfolds. But I wanted to get first what were your initial impressions when you were watching the Daryl and Doc presser yesterday, and just how did it make you feel any better? Was it the shit show you expected? What were your takeaways from it?
I would say I largely feel the exact same way now as I have over the course of the summer with the team. And it still feels largely the same. At the end of the day, this team is going to be Joel Embiid reliant. Whether that is good, bad, or otherwise is for other people to decide, not the team, because that is the way they're going to do it. It's going to be heavy Joel Embiid. Tobias Harris is going to be your number 2. And it seems that they're fully intent on Ben Simmons never playing a game in Philadelphia again. It's what Ben Simmons wants. I think it's what the team wants, but it's hard right now to facilitate a trade when the player, like Ben Simmons, is wholly disinterested in rehabilitating his image. And he's actually doing things in my eyes that are further damaging his image. So he's damaging his image. He doesn't want to come to the team, doesn't want to play basketball, is ignoring his teammates. And so it seems like his stance is essentially, it's not on me to fix my trade value. It's on you to make me a more valuable asset. Mm-hmm. Whether he's right or not, it doesn't matter. He's kind of right in a way that it's Daryl Morey who has to convince these teams like, hey, he's worth X, Y, and Z because this is what he can provide to your team that he can't provide to us. So, I think Doc and Daryl are on the same page. They know what they want to do. They clearly, in my opinion, want to get a creator, a shooter to replace Ben Simmons. I don't think they're as interested in replacing his defense because I think they have the pieces to replace his defense. But I didn't read much into what Doc and Daryl said because I think the most telling things they've said all year were said as soon as the team was eliminated. Doc played his hand the moment the Sixers were eliminated and said, I don't know if we can win a championship with Ben Simmons. That said it all. That was nail in the coffin. You knew he was gone.
Yeah, so I went back and I looked at the Doc Rivers quote because Doc Rivers put on his, master spin class, techniques that he always likes to use over his coaching career, and basically was saying, like, listen to the intent of what I was saying. I was dismissing the question because we were eliminated from a highly emotional game. Okay, plausible reason. Then you go back and look at it. I did not get that vibe at all. And I've always had the take over the summer that Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid's comments post game 7 were not throwing Ben Simmons under the bus. If it was throwing him under the bus, I think it's like the lightest and most loose definition of throwing someone under the bus. Neil Olshey threw Terry Stotts under the bus. Like, that to me is throwing somebody under the bus. But Doc Rivers' comments, I go back and listen to them, and I'm like, okay, yeah, Doc Rivers really fumbled that, when he said that. Joel Embiid, I mean, we've seen thousands of Joel Embiid pressers, interviews, whatever. He's an honest dude, and he's just going to say what he means. And I don't think yes, the play that he was referencing involved Ben, obviously, but I think he was more so answering like, look, that was the turning point in the game. Now, was he honest to a fault? I mean, sure, I guess, if you're sensitive to that kind of comment, which I guess Ben was reportedly, but it wasn't throwing him. I don't see it as that. Doc Rivers, I guess I could see, but it just goes back to my larger point. In the media availability, Doc Rivers tried to put a master spin on everything, including the utterly disgraceful collapse against an injured Atlanta Hawks team that was inexperienced. The Sixers were the heavy favorites, And even if we did lose Danny Green for a lot of that series, that shouldn't matter. We should have beaten the Hawks, but we blew multiple 18-point leads. And Doc tried to spin it as, well, look at the preseason predictions everybody had about us. We actually overachieved. It's like, no, dude, you can't do this. You can't spin it, you know? And I mean, as far as, I guess we could dive into the Simmons stuff now, because
hold on. Before we go too far into that, I just wanted to jump in there for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
To backtrack a little bit, I don't think anything Joel Embiid said was really throwing Ben under the bus. I understand why Ben interpreted it as his teammate not having his back, but to me, what Joel said after that game was 100% accurate. Like, I was at Game 7 in Philadelphia against the Hawks. And
I'm sorry.
All of the energy in the arena in that moment was sucked out when Ben Simmons passed that ball up. Because I was telling someone earlier today, that place was about to explode before. Like, if he had dunked that ball, that place would have gone crazy. I think they were on like a 6-point run. If that ball goes in, like a 6-0 run, and all the momentum would have been on Philly's side. Home crowd would have been back into it with Ben Simmons having scored for the first time in like 3 games in the fourth quarter. And like, it would have changed the complexion of that game. He doesn't dunk it. He throws it off. Matisse goes to the line. Not a great free throw shooter. 1 of 2. Mm-hmm. They go down, hit a 3 on the other end. That's the game. That's the series.
Matisse had a really boneheaded foul on a 3-point shooter to give the Hawks the lead. And it was, I could feel it through the TV, by the way. Like, as the minute Ben Simmons passed the ball, not even Matisse Thybulle receiving it, as soon as Ben cocked his right hand back and threw it, I was like, no, this is over. We're done. Like, this game, we're losing this game. And it's a dumb sports fan thing, but if you watch your team a lot, you have a feel for this kind of thing. And I just knew we were going to lose that game because
it's a sports thing, though, right? Because there are certain moments in every single sporting event that like can change the complexion of a game. I know you're a Niners fan. Mm-hmm. I knew the Niners lost that Super Bowl when Jimmy Garoppolo missed Emmanuel Sanders deep late in that fourth quarter. It was like 9 or 10 minutes left in that fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. When that ball wasn't a catch and, he overthrew him, I knew that game was over. What? Oh no, it is what it is. But like, it's stuff like that like you just know. Like, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and they beat the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, when Patrick Robinson intercepted the ball, it was only 7-7 after he ran the ball back. Yep. I knew that game was over. I knew the Eagles were going to win that football game. You could just trounced feel
the Vikings too.
They did.
After that, I was like, I agree.
Well, it changed the complexion of the game because the way it went, the Vikings had a really long first opening drive. Eagles went like 3 and out, interception, whole momentum swings. But in terms of what Doc Rivers said in his post-game press conference after they lost, I think I think Doc Rivers is insanely lucky the way people have gone at Ben Simmons, because I think Ben Simmons deserves blame for that loss. I think Joel Embiid even deserves blame for that loss. He had 8 turnovers. It's the most under-discussed thing, was he was not turnover prone all season, and then 8 turnovers in the game to decide your season. You can't have that from your best player. But Doc Rivers has gone completely under the radar, I feel. They win that series if they don't blow 25 and 18-point leads. They blew 2 massive leads when they were up 2-1. Right. See,
this is why I have you on the podcast, because that's what I put Ben Simmons at the top of the list in terms of the hierarchy of blame, because even if Ben played like Toronto second round 2019 Ben Simmons, the Sixers are winning that series easily, in my opinion. But it didn't happen, and Simmons, collapsed, barfed all over himself the last 4 games of that Hawks series specifically. But Doc Rivers is like 1B. First of all, everybody knew before the playoffs started, no all-bench lineups. Before the Hawks series, you can't have Danny Green guard Trae Young. Danny Green's an amazing off-ball defender, one of the best transition defenders from the guard spot in NBA history. He is old. He cannot stick with the quicker guards. Now, what does Doc Rivers do in game 1? The entire first half, Danny Green was mostly guarding Trae Young, and Trae Young had 19 of his 25 points in the first half on Danny Green. All bench lineups. Still playing Dwight Howard. Even if Ben Simmons' small ball lineups are a sieve defensively, You're a sieve defensively anyway because you're playing an all-bench lineup. So why not just inject offensive, some offensive flow by surrounding Simmons with 4 shooters if you have to go to a backup center?
And it also, him doing that also ignored the fact that the one time this year we saw Ben Simmons basically play center an entire game, he had 44 points.
Yes.
So like, give him the opportunity to feel empowered in that moment. I think it would have helped his confidence a little bit to have been out there with just a bunch of shooters and been able to play his style of ball, as opposed to always having to conform to what they want to do with Joel Embiid. Like, in a way, I don't know if we've talked about this in your podcast. I think we've talked about it a little bit, like off of either of our podcasts. The way Brett Brown coached this team made so much more sense than the way 100%. Doc Rivers actively coaches this team, because he's so insistent on playing his 2 best players together as much as possible. And that works in the regular season. That's how you're going to win the most amount of games. The team, I have some stats here we'll get to in a little bit that suggest that playing them together is the right move. But like, you need to stagger their minutes, because think about like when they both go to the bench, you're not a better team by having to claw back in the fourth quarter or having to like regain your lead. Like, if you have a 12-point lead, you should keep one of them out there so you can at least keep your 12-point lead. Don't let it get down to a 4-point lead and now you're clawing at the other team to make sure you keep that lead. You're letting teams back into it, and then you're questioning like, oh, well, how do we lose this game? Oh, I don't know, because you're up 25 and you put Dwight Howard, Matisse Thybulle, Shake Milton. Like, Shake Milton was a liability that series, and he kept seeing the court. I understood the thought process, give the bench player some time, but like, if it's 2 minutes he's out there and nothing is working, you yank him, you bring him back out. You put Tyrese Maxey out there. He had a monster, game 6.
Saved their season at that time.
Saved their season, but like, and then game 7, you give him too many minutes because he's struggling. Clearly the lights are a little too bright for a rookie, but you're leaving him out there to die. Like, I don't understand so many of the decisions Doc Rivers made. And I actually think, like, in terms of the blame hierarchy, Doc Rivers should be number 1 on that list. Not even close. We don't even discuss the Ben Simmons missed opportunity, him not dunking the ball. If Doc Rivers doesn't do the boneheaded things he does in games 4 and 5, they win that series in 5 if they're a more well-coached team. A well-coached team does not blow the 15-plus point leads they did. They blew 2.
Brett Brown would have. I don't care what anybody says
about. He would have won that series.
Brett Brown as a coach. I've been a longtime Brett Brown defender, so the fact that you brought him up unprompted, is right up my wheelhouse. So I'm going to agree with you. But Brett Brown would have won that series with just 2 basic different decisions from Doc: staggering the minutes and realizing that Dwight Howard was not the answer as the backup center. Like, it's really that simple, man. And he would have had Ben Simmons guarding Trae Young from Jump Street. Like, if the Sixers win those first 2 games, okay, the series goes back to Atlanta. Okay, Atlanta wins one of those 2 home games. But the series is going to be over in 5 or 6. Like,
I still, like, the games I stick on, like, yeah, game 7's really bad. Don't get me wrong. Like, I tweeted after the game, like, prison, Ben Simmons, Doc Rivers.
Can I guess what 2 games you're going to bring up?
Go ahead.
I mean, it has to be game 4 and game 1, right?
No, it's game 4 and 5. They were up.
Oh yeah, game 5.
They were
You're
up
right.
2-1.
You're right. Sorry,
they were up 2-1.
That series has made me partially black out too. So it's like,
I believe,
right,
if I'm not mistaken, game 4 was an 18-point blown lead. Game 5 was a 25-point blown lead at home. At home, blew a 25-point lead, and
where the Sixers were utterly dominant at home.
Utterly dominant for the last like 3-4 years, and let's not ignore the fact that they lost 3 home games in that series. Game 1?
Game 1, game 5,
game
and game
5,
7.
and game 7.
Game 7, the safety net, the reason you get home court advantage
is so you have a home court game 7 and you lose.
And you blow it.
That's on your head coach. That falls on your head coach, whether or not they like that or not. And
You're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
Danny Green was a big loss in that series. I think they win that
shouldn't have
series if
mattered.
Danny Green is healthy, but it should not have mattered. Danny
Yeah.
Green should not be the reason you win or lose a series, because the Hawks could have done the same thing with DeAndre Hunter. They could have done the same exact, oh, well, we lost. If they had lost the series, they could have done,
Bogdanovic had a really bad knee in that series. Like the Hawks were hobbled and injured way more than us. And even then, we were more talented. But you could talk me into obviously you could talk me into Doc Rivers being at the top. I just think if Simmons plays like 2% better, and I'm being conservative, like the Hawks lose that series, I believe. But
let's give them, in terms of like a pie chart, like of blame, I would put it like 40% Ben Simmons, 40% Doc Rivers, and a lot of people aren't going to like this. 20% of it has to go to Daryl Morey. He brought in George Hill to be like that emergency point guard in the playoffs, come off the bench, play good defense. Danny Green gets hurt. George Hill should have been getting those minutes, but he wasn't good enough to get those minutes. Yep. Daryl Morey deserves some of the blame here. And I know Sixers fans don't really want to hear that, but he hasn't been, he has a lot of good graces in my books just because of the Seth Curry trade.
He did a lot to maneuver in a quick off season.
Correct. So he gets a lot of credit in my book, but he also should get some of the blame as well. Maybe not 20%. Maybe it's more like 10, 15.
I would say 5 or 10%. Because even with the George Hill thing, I was like, okay, yes, he can definitely add some versatility to different lineups and stuff. But I just wondered how much he had left in the tank, especially because he had an outlier shooting season from three, even by George Hill standards, who's a good shooter with the Bucks in 2019-20. But either way, yeah. And there's blame to go around. I just don't agree with people who are saying, this Simmons saga is half the Sixers' fault and half the Ben Simmons' fault. I don't agree with that. I think the Sixers aren't faultless in this, but I think a lot of this could have been avoided, and we're going to talk about it now, but a lot of this could have been avoided if Ben Simmons had have made a conscious effort, and I'm not going to question what he works on during the summer. I think everybody who's plugged in and all that, everybody says he works on his game in the summer. Taking that and applying it to the actual game, he has failed to do that, and that is the reason why we're here. And so I want to transition to a few reports that came out today, one from The Athletic, one from, I just read it like an hour ago. I didn't see it at first, but Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer. Sam Amick of The Athletic basically spelled out that Ben Simmons thinks that Joel Embiid isn't conducive for Simmons to reach his full potential in his game. And Kevin O'Connor kind of confirmed those reports in his story on The Ringer. Kevin O'Connor actually detailed the meeting that Doc Rivers, Daryl Morey, Sixers brass had with Simmons and his agent Rich Paul in LA. Doc Rivers explained, "Hey, we can use you at the 5 with Tobias Harris and Georges Niang at the 3 and the 4. Gee, Doc, it would have been nice if you actually did that in the Hawks series, by the way." But they presented Simmons with stats, numbers, different offensive ideas to use them and all that stuff. Simmons was really unresponsive, according to O'Connor. And when Doc asked if there is anything on offense, basically, that convinced Simmons if he could come back, Simmons simply replied no. I imagine Simmons was probably very stoic in the meeting like he usually is. But I'm sure I shared you the story. I'm sure you've read it, or at least, took a gander at it a little bit. I'm just wondering, what is the perfect team for Simmons? Because Zach Lowe called him the most idiosyncratic player in the NBA. And that's actually kind of an apt description, because I've never seen a player who won't do 2 or 3 things that are very crucial to playing basketball, but he's so great at so many other things. But you need a specific roster around Simmons. And I don't think that specific roster, the ideal roster around Simmons, is a contender or even a playoff team that could get past the second round. So I'm just wondering if Simmons truly believes Embiid is holding him back. Is he even going to be any different when he's in a new situation?
So I I'm kind of torn on this because on one hand, I think he's kind of right in a way where Simmons and Embiid's games don't complement each other very well. They just win a lot of games because they're both so good at basketball. So because they're so good at basketball, they can kind of figure it out. But when push comes to shove, they're both guys who want to shoot around the basket. Actually, one of my first great stats I found earlier today, Ben Simmons over, let me find the exact stat so I can be correct. Ben Simmons amongst guards who have taken at least 1,000 shots easily has the shortest distance, average shot distance since he entered the league. It's 5.6 feet. It's his average shot distance. The next lowest is Bruce Brown at 8.9 feet. So, like, their games in that way
had Bruce Brown at center pretty much in his role.
Exactly. And so they don't complement each other well in that way, where Embiid and Simmons both need guys around them who can shoot, and they both want to work in the painted area. So, come playoff time, court shrinks. It just doesn't work as well. You need more shooters. But on the other hand, it's undeniable to say these two haven't been great together when they've played. Here's another stat that is out there. So last season, the Sixers outscored opponents by 15.5 points per 100 possessions when both those guys were on the court together. That was the 5th best amongst 2-man lineups that played at least 1,000 minutes together. But if you break it down further, when it was just Embiid on the floor, they were only 1.9 points better per 100 possessions. So that leads you to think that, oh, well, then Simmons and Embiid together are great. And the thing that really hurts Simmons here, when it was just Simmons on the court, which they did that for 713 minutes.
Yeah, I think I saw this stat floating on Twitter too.
Minus 3.8.
Mm-hmm.
When they were both off the floor, it was 2.7 in the positive direction. So that is not great for Ben Simmons. That the moment Joel Embiid sat on the bench, he was not the same basketball player, where Embiid was still at least in the positive. The other thing I will say to defend Ben Simmons, though, I mean, they were trying out lineups with Matisse Thybulle and Dwight Howard next to him. Yeah. That's not conducive to how he plays basketball. So I don't know. I don't think he can be your number 1 guy on a championship team, but if he's your number 2 guy and you can play him at the 4 or the 5, and your number 1 is a shot creator, a guy who can get his own shot, I'm trying to think of the ideal
Drew Holiday with Giannis.
Well, no, I mean
something like that.
Let's be honest. The ideal pairing for Ben Simmons is Steph Curry. If his teammates were Steph Curry, if he was Draymond Green, he'd be great because he's a better defender right now than Draymond Green is. He is literally the best 3-point shot creator in the league. No one creates more 3-point shot opportunities than Ben Simmons. He rebounds the basketball really well. He just needs to be in a situation where he's not asked to be the go-to get your own basket guy late in the 4th quarter, because he can't do that. He's never going to be able to do that. And so I don't know where it's best for him. I don't know.
That's the thing. Simmons' game is so unique and specific that you can almost not. It's almost kind of impossible to find an ideal scenario for him. Like you mentioned, 2 things stick out when you bring up those stats. It's one, I've always contended that Simmons and Embiid were a fine fit offensively. It wasn't perfect, and the Sixers certainly, through multiple regimes in the front office, really fucked up not, fitting the roster around these two properly. And the Markelle Fultz thing is that's patient zero right there, because that was the guard that was supposed to tie everything together, right? The combo guard with the handle and shooting off the dribble, et cetera, et cetera. But the other thing is, Simmons those numbers don't do Simmons justice when Embiid is off the floor, because he's playing with Dwight Howard and Matisse Thybulle. But that's kind of the problem also with Simmons, is that you need specific players to work around him. And that's my problem with this report, and why I did a pretty much angry recording, or controlled anger recording video that I did on my Sly Hooper YouTube channel today. It just seems like Ben Simmons, everything has to cater around Ben, and Kyle Neubeck of the Philly Voice, who's amazing. detailed this out pretty well when he did his post-mortem season of the Sixers season. Basically, Simmons hasn't really done anything to make it a two-way street in terms of working around his teammates and what they want to do. Like, it's always Ben needs shooters around him. Ben needs a backup big. When there's so many that can stretch the floor exclusively, when there's so few bigs that can do that. The Sixers paid Al Horford to be an expensive backup center just to complement Ben, while being a detriment to Joel Embiid's spacing in the 2019-20 season. It's always, we have to capitulate to Ben. Embiid literally every single year added something to his game, became malleable to try to make it work with Simmons. I don't know what their relationship is, but it's clear Embiid knows that with Simmons on the team, the Sixers have a better chance of winning and have a better chance of achieving the goal that he wants, which is to win for the city of Philadelphia, which he expressed yesterday. Ben Simmons was in a great situation last year. The entire starting lineup shot above 30% from three, 37% from three. Embiid was the lowest at 37.7%. Danny Green shot 40%. Seth Curry shot 45%. Tobias Harris, I wish he would shoot more, shot 39.4% from three. Like, Simmons was in an ideal starting lineup. And Ty Windish, who hosts the Eurostep podcast, big Bucks fan, big Bucks podcast on Blue Wire, he brought up this point when, what was it, a month ago, people brought up the Simmons-Giannis debate again, which we need to kill, by the way. Like, it's insulting to Giannis. But Ty pretty much said, how about we put Giannis in Ben's situation instead of trying to put Ben in Milwaukee's situation? How about we do this thought exercise? Put Giannis in Ben's situation. Do you think the Sixers wouldn't win the championship if Giannis and Embiid were on the same team? Like, Simmons had an ideal situation. There's no excuse for why his scoring was so low as it was the entire regular season. And in the Hawks series, I agree with some of your points about Embiid and Simmons sharing the same areas of the floor and how that could be cramped. There were plenty of opportunities for Simmons to attack the rim and get to the free throw line. But because he didn't shoot free throws well and had Hackabin happen to him a few times, confidence, and he doesn't drive to the rim. And then he stands in the dunker spot, runs to the corner.
Real quick on a point you just made there. You said he doesn't shoot free throws well. Actually, last postseason, he was the worst free throw shooter in NBA postseason history. Yep. 34.2%. The worst ever. The second worst was Shaquille. It was the worst ever in a single postseason. The next worst was 37.4% from Shaq the year he won a title in Miami. So I don't care that he shot 37%.
Exactly. And it's like and also one of the other main reasonings in that Sam Amick article that Kevin O'Connor kind of not disputed, but kind of did in the other report. This all started when the Sixers almost traded Ben to Houston for James Harden, which who wouldn't do that? And that's my other thing with this. If you were so mad that the Sixers threw you in a trade for an MVP player who has been to 2 conference finals and an NBA finals and has been a bona fide tier 1 franchise player for some odd years now, then you should have worked on your game earlier. Like, I put this in my video. Last season, if the Celtics were in our situation and they were going to trade for James Harden, if there was a report that the Celtics were going to put Jason Tatum in the trade, Celtics fans would riot. Tom Shively would personally burn down the city of Boston if that happened.
They should have done it.
Hey, whatever. Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do, I guess, or not. But if Tatum was in the trade, the Celtics fans would say, hell no. No with the capital N-O, no. If Simmons had given the Sixers optimism that his trajectory was going to be nothing but this, going up, because he was improving and actually willing to expand his offensive game, then maybe the Sixers would have been a lot more hesitant to include Simmons in a Harden deal. And Joel Embiid had great perspective yesterday. I think it was one of Joe's most honest pressers ever. But he basically said, look, we got to look at ourselves in the mirror and grow up pretty much. Like if the Warriors offered Steph and Clay for Joel, he's like, do you think the Sixers would say no? I wouldn't say no. Like if you're mad at that, then like come on, man. And I'm for players wanting to change the scenery and wanting what's best for their careers. But it's like you gotta have at least some self-reflection, because it just seems like a lot of the reporting over the summer was just basically Ben pushing everything on the Sixers, like as to why he hasn't been as successful as he thinks he should have been, I guess.
So I don't know. Obviously, I think this goes without saying, but I obviously don't know Ben Simmons, don't know anything about his personality. I've never had a conversation with him, obviously. Like these are all very obvious statements that but I want to preface that before I say what I'm about to say.
And I'm with you on the prefacing, because I haven't done any of those things either.
I am of the belief that Ben Simmons is more interested in being a celebrity than he is in being a star basketball player. It appears to me he likes the celebrity more than he likes playing basketball. And maybe that is wrong to question how much he likes basketball, but the lack of improvement of his game from his first year to now, let's be honest, he's a better defender. That's it.
That's all. And as a Simmons centrist, it's been funny seeing Simmons defenders just point to that for these last 2 or 3 years. And look, I as Simmons centrist, that leans more towards pro Ben, but that's really the only improvement.
And he's 6'10" and he runs like a 4.5 40. You better be good on defense. If you're not going to shoot,
Yeah.
You better be able to play defense.
I know.
So like that is the only thing that has improved from his game. He's actually a worse shooter now than when he walked into the league. He shoots the ball less. He's a worse free throw shooter. So if anything, he's gotten worse at basketball. And it's just perplexing to see him regress in that way, while at the same time, you see him shacking up with Tinashe was the first one. Then there's all this on off with Kendall Jenner. Like you see him more in the tabloids than you see him improving his jump shot. I've seen no tangible things to show he can improve his jump shot. And listen, my man's got paid, so it was worth it. But I don't know. I don't know what to make of Ben Simmons, and that's really all I have to. It's really all I have to say about it.
One more thing about Ben, because there's an actual basketball team that we need to talk about. But did you see the Yaron Weitzman report after the Hawks series ended? He was basically detailed, why Ben is, the type of player he is, why he stagnated. And there was a few excerpts from it. One of them was when he, was sitting out his entire rookie year because of the broken foot. Brett Brown hired John Townsend, who's a renowned shooting coach, to work with Ben, and they were working on the jump shot. And, when Simmons actually played in his first playoffs, he was 70% from the free throw line. There was some tangible improvement. Summer League Ben Simmons was letting it fly. It's weird how we have like these folkloric legends in the Sixers. There's Summer League Markelle Fultz, where he played like 2 Summer League games and then hurt his ankle in Vegas Summer League. And then the next time we saw him, he had a really bad looking jumper. But Ben Simmons in Summer League would let it fly. Rookie year Ben Simmons would let it fly. He would try different types of shots too. And then going into the 2018-19 season, I guess him and Rich Paul and his family decided to hire Ben's half-brother, Liam. His half-brother or full-blooded brother?
I actually don't know.
But to hire him and to be a shooting coach. And what improvements have we seen? We've seen regression. And the most experience Liam has had is he's a low-level D1 basketball player and has been a D2 coach. No experience working with pros whatsoever. And it's like, and Brett Brown, I guess, was like, really? Like, I'm actually happy for Brett Brown that he's kind of had a few years off from the craziness that is the Sixers, but we'll see. I think Daryl Morey's going to hold his ground. It's been funny seeing people say like the Sixers have no leverage and all this other stuff. I think the leverage has been the same the minute the Hawks series ended. And I think Daryl Morey's going to stand his ground. The media day wasn't as much of a shit show as I thought it would be, though. It just seemed like, yeah, well, Ben's here, he's here. If he's not, we're going to move on. with the other teams. And that's what we're going to do because we spent 35 minutes talking about Media Day and Ben Simmons. So, San Simmons, I'm wondering how you feel about, specifically about the guard and wing rotation. If you're talking about wings, really the only big wing we have is Matisse Thybulle. I think Tobias Harris is going to be starting at power forward, which is his best position, I think. And really that's only it. And even then, Matisse Thybulle is 6'5". He's still kind of skinny. I hope, over the course of his career, he bulks up a little bit more. But with Simmons, without Simmons, unfortunately, the Sixers don't have the identity of being a big physical defensive team anymore. And so I'm wondering how you feel about the guard rotation today or right now. And I know today Kyle Neubeck and the Sixers media, when they were allowed in the scrimmage portion of the practice towards the end, Maxey was with the ones. It was Maxey, Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias, and Joel. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm excited to see a point guard that could dribble and make a layup after dribbling and shooting off the dribble. But that's really small defensively. So how do you feel about the guards and the wings and what you kind of expect from them this upcoming season?
So I think in terms of the rotations, I think without Ben Simmons, it's almost undeniable in my eyes. They're going to take a step back. But that I only think that based on the thought that Ben Simmons just isn't going to play. Because if they make a trade, you have to imagine they're going to get some sort of tangible piece that they can put in Ben Simmons' place. The most realistic targets at this point, I think CJ McCollum is still a very realistic target. Again, downgrade on defense, but massive upgrade on the offensive end. I mean, people forget he single-handedly won Portland a game 7 a couple years ago against Denver.
Yep.
when Damian Lillard disappeared. So I think Lillard's unrealistic at this point. I still think, though, push comes to shove, no one can offer a better offer than the Sixers can with a combination of like Simmons and some of the other guys for Damian Lillard. I just don't think Damian Lillard's available is the problem. So,
or Bradley Beal for that matter.
I don't want Bradley Beal at this point, though. It seems like he's going to miss some games because of COVID, and he's comfortable doing that. So I wouldn't really want him on my team personally. But I think he's a realistic target. And then the other team that's been thrown out there a lot is Cleveland. I would love either of Sexton or Garland. I think both of them would perfectly complement what this team wants to do. I actually think Sexton is a worse shooter than Garland is, but is a better defender. Garland gives you more of that, throw it into Embiid in the post, and now you have 3 to 4 shooters around him who can catch and shoot. So I think that could be helpful. But as the team is currently constructed, I mean, the guard depth is obviously a problem. It's been a problem for the last 4 years, it feels like. So it's obviously a problem. It's going to be on Daryl to fix it. Again, that's a Daryl thing that he has to figure out. But I will say I am optimistic about the defense still being good because
we have Joel Embiid.
Not even that. I think there's a world where the Olympics were super helpful to Matisse Thybulle. He comes back suddenly as a better and improved 3-point shooter. And if you can slot him into the starting lineup instead of Danny Green, you've just taken leaps and bounds ahead on defense. Or if he's an improved enough shooter, you could put him in for Seth Curry, but I love the pairing of Seth Curry and Joel Embiid so much. I don't think they should take that away. So to me, if you can get Matisse Thybulle out there instead of Danny Green, you'd be a better defensive team. And it's just a matter of replacing his 3-point production, which could be hard for Thybulle at this point. But I'm still cautiously optimistic. But in terms of you look at the rest of the East, Milwaukee is obviously better than them right now.
Brooklyn and Milwaukee are in their own tier for me.
Yeah, the Nets, even without Kyrie Irving, are clearly better than the Philadelphia 76ers are right now. Maybe I'm crazy. I'm not super high on the Miami Heat. Between Jimmy Butler's,
I'm higher on their top end talent. They're gonna have some questions They're gonna have to answer some questions for me about the rest of their team, like their depth and all that.
Here's my thing: they have multiple players on their team who have shown a propensity. A downright refusal to shoot. Jimmy Butler, for some reason, has decided he does not want to shoot 3-pointers anymore. Don't know why that is, but
it
Jimmy
started
Butler
in Philadelphia. It started because he would take like one. I remember there was at one point he took like 3 catch and shoot threes in a month in Philly, and Derek Bodner was just like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. He's like, I don't want to shoot threes, but I'm good at it, and it's so weird. It's
the weirdest thing.
Bam Adebayo is another one, afraid to shoot anything past the paint. Like he just seems afraid to shoot mid-range jump shots, which is all they need. They don't need him to shoot threes. He doesn't want to shoot anything outside the paint. I don't know why that is.
Basically, if it's beyond the foul line, Bam isn't shooting because he has a nice little foul line. He's developed a nice little foul line jumper over the last
even
few
that
years.
in the playoffs last year, he wouldn't even shoot that. It's just like Ben Simmons. It's the weirdest thing. And then Kyle Lowry's 35. It's not like he wasn't. Once he wasn't traded, it wasn't like he wasn't playing because they were trying to protect his trade value and whatnot. Because they were going to get what they were going to get for him no matter what. He said he was going to Miami. Toronto was going to get stuck with, the scraps of whatever Miami wanted to give them at that point. But like, he wasn't playing because he couldn't stay healthy. There's no guarantee that he can stay healthy at this point at the age he is. And he hasn't really stayed healthy, including the year they won the championship. He was in and out of the lineup as well. Not as often as Kawhi Leonard, but he was still in and out of the lineup.
Yeah.
So Kyle Lowry, like, I don't know what you're going to get from Kyle Lowry. Tyler Hero, he a darling in the finals. I think much like Ben Simmons, he's more interested in being a celebrity than he is a basketball player. And so, he's in music videos. He's in all these commercials. I haven't seen him improve on his game. He needs to improve on defense. I haven't seen a propensity to do that. Duncan Robinson, terrible defender. I don't see it from the Miami Heat the way other people do. I do see it from the Chicago Bulls. I think that the DeMar DeRozan fit is kind of weird. I don't know how he's going to work, but that team might be the best defensive team in basketball next year because I think they're going to be that good on the defensive end of the floor. I think Zach LaVine's not a great defender, but I think he's competent. And I think they're going to be the most versatile defensive team. So it's going to be hard to hunt a matchup against them. Because
I am high on the Bulls, but I'm going to have to disagree with you slightly there on the defense because, Patrick Williams we'll see how long he's going to be out because he just got injured.
Loss.
But if 2 of your 5 starters are good defenders, whereas DeRozan, LaVine, and Nikola Vucevic are in the lineup, I can't see how that's going to be a top half team defensively. But I am high on the Bulls. I think they're going to be a play-in team in the sense that they're an 8th seed now because how the rules are wacky now with the 7th and 8th seed. But I think the Bulls could be a 7th or 8th seed for sure.
They're better than Miami. I think the Bulls are better than the Miami Heat. And I
like it.
I'm willing to die on that hill. I still think the Sixers are better than both of them. So I guess that puts the Sixers as the 3rd best team in my East hierarchy.
I actually think Atlanta might be better than Philadelphia.
Oh, I forgot about it. See, I just have expunged Atlanta from my memory.
We both had blackout moments on this podcast about the Hawks and the Sixers.
I'm going to be honest. The Hawks could be the 1 seed. I think they have that much potential. I think when healthy, the combination of Trae Young, who is primed and ready to win an MVP here in the next couple of years. He doesn't play enough defense, but we know that doesn't matter. He can put up Steph Curry like numbers the way Steph Curry did when they were going on those runs. And the Hawks last year in the playoffs gave off this vibe to me like the Warriors right before the Warriors went on their tear. They have all the pieces in place.
They're so deep at every position.
And they've drafted so incredibly well. If they're healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if they were the 1 seed next year. I wouldn't be surprised if come playoffs, it's like, wow, the Hawks have really surprised everyone. They might win the NBA title. I think the Hawks are going to be really, I'm happy you brought them up. I had forgotten about them.
The Hawks are going to be really good. They have,
and that's, and this just real quick, this is what sucks so much about last season. The East was so open. The Nets weren't healthy and they hadn't had a lot of playing time together. So they weren't gelling that well yet. The Bucks still hadn't won a title. So they largely did not have the confidence they now have. I'm sure the Bucks have.
And they were a Kevin Durant, maybe one less shoe size away from being eliminated.
Yeah, so like I think this is going to be the most confident the Bucks have ever been going into a season.
The
The
championship bump, yep.
Hawks were young and inexperienced. You handed them
A
a
taste.
massive Game 7 win. Now they know what it's like to be there. They're going to be hungry to get back, especially how young they are. They have the experience to go with it. And then there's
the most
Sixers.
confident player on the team now has even more crazy confidence.
The Sixers, when you look back to last season, were the healthiest team. They were the 1 seed, so they had home court advantage. They had the MVP of the league until he got hurt. So you could argue they had the best player in any series. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying at the time you could have argued that. I probably would have argued that. And now you go into this season, you don't know if you're going to have your starting point guard. He actually was probably on his way out. You didn't do a lot in free agency to tangibly get better and put yourself on equal footing with Brooklyn and Milwaukee. So I don't know. They're probably like the 4th best team in the East. If they ended up being like the 6th seed this year because like some team surprises us, I don't know who that would be. Like
I wouldn't be surprised if they were.
Say the Heat and the Bulls were both better than them. That's a realistic outcome, that they're the 6th seed behind both the Heat and the Bulls, in my opinion. And that sucks. You squandered your best opportunity to win an NBA championship last season. I'm not saying all is for naught. It's all over. You know, sell the team. They should sell the team, but like I'm not
Harris
saying
should sell the team.
Exactly. Like I'm not saying like panic, throw everyone overboard, but I am saying like the window is shrinking, and it's shrinking very quickly because Joel Embiid is 7 feet tall and has a history of knee issues. You have to win a championship in the next 3 to 4 years. If they don't, they should blow it up.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is that's the tough reality of it.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even mention the Celtics. The Celtics are going to be great.
You're right.
Year.
We forgot about, because I really love as much as I hate Boston, I thought the Celtics killed their offseason.
I did not.
I think they're better than last year. I think getting Dennis Schroeder as a backup point guard, that's great value. I think Robert Williams is primed for a breakout year this year. And I think Jason Tatum, he's been improving every year. I think he's ready to take the next step. He's the dark horse MVP candidate that everybody's picking as a dark horse MVP candidate. So I don't even think that the pick's that interesting. But he's definitely going to be an MVP candidate this year. I expect Jaylen Brown to improve. Like the Celtics could be, way better than last year. And they have the guards and wings to attack the Sixers' smaller wings and guards, which is my concern with all of this. And going back to the lineup thing real quick, Maxey, I think he has a lot of good potential as a point of attack defender, but he's small. He's 6'2". He's like barely 200 pounds. He said he was 198 in one of the Sixers Instagram videos. Seth Curry, obviously we saw how much the Hawks towards the end of that series made it a point to hunt Seth Curry with Kevin Huerter had a big Game 7.
Kevin Huerter had a big Game 7. Just think about that for a second.
Don't disrespect Red Velvet like that.
I will continue to disrespect Red Velvet. Both the cake and Kevin Huerter.
Okay, no, the cake, come on now.
Terrible.
You're bringing in hot takes with food and basketball. I love it. Danny Green, as we mentioned earlier, slow, older, can't really guard quicker players anymore. And Tobias Harris, for all the improvements he made defensively, at best he's still average. And a lot's going to be put on Joel Embiid defensively. But offensively, I'm kind of optimistic. I'm not going to lie. Because the Sixers have a point guard who could dribble. He could get to the rim. That will create a lot more stuff for Embiid and all the other shooters. Embiid can run more pick and roll now, which I think will actually help his longevity because he's not being a battering ram on the block as often, and he could get easier shots that way. But I think you might be, in terms of East hierarchy, honestly, like if you put me on a lie detector and asked me if I was more optimistic about the Sixers regular season outlook or the Hawks, I would say the Hawks. Just the way they built their team. This is the problem with building your team around a damn point guard who won't shoot. Like, as soon as Simmons leaves, there's a giant hole there. And that leaves a bunch of small guards, wings who are meant to fit around Simmons because of the positional versatility and all that stuff. And you can kind of invert your roster with a player like Simmons. And now look where we're at. We might be better offensively, but defensively, I have my concerns. And
real quick, I'll say this. I think they have a high level of variance in terms of how good they can be based on their defense. I think the Sixers at their best are not any better than a 3 seed, and maybe they get higher in the regular season just because Doc Rivers is a fairly good regular season coach. It's the postseason where it becomes an issue. But I'll say, like, in terms of how I'd rank the teams, I think their top end is like third best team in the East. I think no matter what, they can't be better than Brooklyn and Milwaukee. Those two teams are undoubtedly, in my mind, going to be better than them. There's a chance they could be better than like an Atlanta. Like there's a realistic scenario where that happens. I think the floor, though, like the floor is they're the 7th best team in the East.
Yeah.
Or what is that, 7 or 8? I think
that's that's play-in.
Yeah,
that's
like
they're play-in range.
Like there's a chance they're a play-in team. And maybe that's what they need. It's what the Celtics needed to make some changes. Like maybe that's just what this team needs. And in my head, it's not the worst case scenario because it means we're getting a new head coach, but it's also a horrible scenario because it's another wasted year.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another wasted Joel Embiid year. And like I've already said, I have no idea how many more years that he has left.
That's the big thing looming over this is Joel Embiid, as much as I love him, as much as I loved him in college, as much as I was ecstatic when we drafted him, he's kind of a ticking time bomb, as I hate to say it. We don't know how long the timer is on the time bomb, but with his injury variance, and look, he's had some freak injuries, but that's kind of what happens with injury-prone players, I feel. And I want Embiid to shake the injury-prone label so badly, but they're like every season we've baked in the fact that Embiid is probably going to miss 20 games. And that's why we're getting the backup centers that we've always had. And like the time is now, dude. Like Hakeem Olajuwon, I was looking it up the other day. I'll pull it up right now, but look at his season after his age 34 season in Houston, the 96-97 season, when they had that huge super team of Barkley and Pippen, even though they were
bad.
They were like Hakeem Olajuwon in his age 34 year averaged 23 and 9 rebounds a game. And then it dipped precipitously after that. And that is the outlier because centers usually aren't productive for that long unless you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Wilt Chamberlain. And it's kind of scary what Joel Embiid in his 30s is going to be an adventure. I think past 32 is my optimistic outlook, but like post 30s Joel Embiid is going to be a scary proposition. I'm glad he took the max. I'm glad he's going to be a Sixer probably for the rest of his career. He seems to love it there, but like there's definitely a looming variance with Embiid's injuries, which is scary.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with all of that. But I like I said, the East is interesting. I'm almost like I can't wait to do my NBA preview because I'm far more interested in the West. I think there's a lot of variance in the West where the
agree.
East, the East, the hierarchy is pretty clear to me, and the Sixers are not in that top tier. So they're in that second tier of teams with the Miamis. I think Boston's in that second tier of teams. I think Chicago personally is in that second tier of teams. I think Atlanta's in that first tier now. The more we've talked about it, I think they're in that same.
Yeah, the Hawks sound a lot better the more you talk about them.
Yeah, they're deep at multiple positions, and like I said, when healthy, they can. I mean, outside of Trae Young, their starting lineup is excellent defensively.
Mm-hmm.
So
because DeAndre Hunter's going to be back. John Collins, agreed to a contract this summer. Clint Capella is going to be there for a long time, and he was fantastic all last season.
Cam Reddish off the bench is a great defender.
Cam Reddish off the bench. I mean, who did they got Sharif Cooper too, who I wanted on the Sixers. Like and he's a rookie obviously, but they have depth everywhere. And it's
Still haven't mentioned Bogdan.
yeah. I mentioned him.
Or
in
sorry,
this,
no.
no, you're right. You're right. No, I meant no.
Which
I did mention
Bogdanovich is that?
Bogdan. I did mention Bogdan Bogdanovich.
Too many. There's anything more than one Bogdanovich in the league is that's too many Bogdanoviches.
With Bogdan, living in Sacramento, with Bogdan, I figured out it's Bogdanovich, not because Boyan's is Bogdanovich. Bogdan is Bogdanovich.
Oh, Bogdan. Okay.
Yeah, Bogdan. And that's why they call him Bogey. He's so affectionately remembered as Bogey here in Sacramento. Who don't blame them for still being mad that he's not here. You got Kevin Huerter. Like, that Hawks team is stacked. But I agree with you. The West is a lot more interesting. I think there are a lot more questions over there. There's injuries to big stars. I don't think the Lakers are the lockdown favorite in the West like they were preseason last year. It's a lot more fun over there. But unfortunately, we are watching teams rise in the East and the Sixers seemingly stepping back. One last thing before, we dip out here. I wonder what your expectations are of basically any of the younger guys, the guys years 3 and under. The Sixers, agreed to a contract with Charles Bassey finally, which was, the Simmons saga overshadowed everything, but that was kind of weird for a second there. But they seem to have agreed to a 3-year deal with the 53rd pick in the draft. They obviously took Jaden Springer in the first round. You got Thibault, you got Milton, you got Maxey. Do you see Daryl and Doc kind of talked about how a lot of those guys are on the upswing and a lot of one seeds would want to be in that position and all that? Do you have any, favorites to kind of make a jump to kind of establish themselves on the team and make an impact? What are you feeling about the young guys? And if you have any specific guys you're highlighting, let me know.
All right, here we go. Guys who I put them in different categories. So let me do first guys I'm expecting to make a jump and be contributors.
All right.
And be contributors come playoff time. Tyrese Maxey, if he's your starting point guard, is obviously just with the minutes he's going to play, he's going to take a jump. He's going to be a contributor come playoff time. I really like Tyrese Maxey. I think he really, despite his size, I think he actually does complement Joel Embiid well, which is such a change of pace for how the Sixers have drafted before. So shout out to Daryl Morey on that one.
And shout out to all the teams who passed on Maxey too. Because a lot of draft experts were like, what?
Yeah, kind of boneheaded to pass on Tyrese Maxey. So he's like, to me, obvious candidate, definitely going to take a step forward. Then I have my guy that I think is very possible, almost likely he takes a step forward. His defense could be what holds him back. Isaiah Joe offers this team something. I think he's a more consistent shooter than Furkan Korkmaz. I think Furkan is like valuable in what he does, but think about those games where Furkan is like just ice cold, 0 for 4 from 3, his first 4 attempts. It's the mid-second quarter. You're like, man, we need to get someone out there. Isaiah Joe can do that. You throw him out there. He's long, so he's probably rangy. He can learn on the fly and become a better defender. I really like Isaiah
willing
Joe.
And deep 3-point shooter too, by the way.
Yeah. I really like Isaiah Joe, and I think he is a prime candidate for someone who could be a major rotation player come playoff time.
I like Isaiah Joe a lot. And also Furkan Korkmaz is like the most hot and cold 37.5 3-point shooter I might have seen. Like
his games are like 0 for 8 and then 7 of 11.
Like there's no in between whatsoever. But yeah, I was actually last year when Furk was on one of his patented cold stretches, I was like, maybe Isaiah Joe minutes,
Oh,
like,
that was me.
Yeah, I don't think you were alone there. Isaiah Joe, yeah, definitely somebody I'm keeping an eye on too. But continue.
And so the last two guys, Thibault, I'm 50-50 on. Part of me feels like he's going to take a step forward, but it hinges 100% on his offensive game. He has to shoot the ball better. He has to be a more willing shooter. Most importantly, he at times passed up a lot of open shot opportunities to try and get a more open shot. And it's the NBA. You take the first open shot you get. Like it just is what it is. Is it nice to move the ball around, get a better shot? Of course, you can't always do that. So to me, Matisse Thybulle could go either way. I'm expecting him to be a little bit better just because of the Olympics, but I'm not expecting him to go from unwilling shooter to he'll shoot everything. I still think that I wish he had Furkan's mentality of just I'm going to shoot everything, because I think he'd be a better player for it.
I feel like there were some games Thybulle had that, but it became like all right, like you're taking a way too early three in like with 18 seconds on the shot clock and stuff like that. But you're right. You're like Thybulle. If Thybulle can get to 35% from three, like that's an automatic 4-year contract right there. Like that, he's going to make a lot of money because he's one of the, I can't even describe his defense. It's so unique. It's not even like the Kawhi Leonard, like I'm just going to inhale you and erase you, send you to the shadow realm from this game. Like Thybulle, he can sit down in a stance and play one-on-one defense, but his hands and his off-ball instincts are so insane to me. It's like, how can you move like that? Like Zach Lowe put it in one of his articles that Thybulle doesn't move, he apparates. And I was like, wow, he moves like, he really does move like a ghost out there. Like he's if it wasn't for Dwayne Wade, like I would say Thybulle is like the best shot blocking guard I've seen. Like, I'm probably gonna, if this was on Twitter, I'd be roasted for it, but I just don't have a recent example besides Dwayne Wade. But Thybulle, the way he blocks jumpers, the way he is an off-ball, the way he defends off-ball, the way he's gotten better. I think one-on-one he can be great at it, but I think he needs to stay down more and not be as jumpy because he had a few crucial fouls in that Hawks series. But you're right. It's going to hinge a lot on Thybulle's three-pointer.
Matisse Thybulle is a future defensive player of the year to me. I think it's not a matter of if, it's when.
It's when.
He just needs more minutes. Once he gets the minutes, like this year, if he was a 30 minutes a game guy, he was easily the defensive player of the year. To me, he was the most consistent and best defender on any team in the NBA last season. He just didn't have the minutes. Now, granted, I thought Ben Simmons should have won it, but that's neither here nor there. And then the last guy on my list is guy I want to take a step forward. I just don't know if he's going to get the minutes to. I mean, straight out the mud, B-ball Paul. I think Paul Reed has the offensive game to make it in the NBA. I think his defense lacks because he's 6'9" and is like a power forward. So he gives up a lot in terms of height. But to me, he would have been a much better option last year in the playoffs over Dwight Howard if they had even tried him out in lineups during the regular season. They were unwilling to give him minutes in the regular season, and so they couldn't even try him in the postseason.
I wonder who's the blame for that. It
might
be a coach who I'm just going to go by Glenn. I should have gone with the Mark Zumoff shtick and just called him Glenn Rivers because that's what I want to do. I want to call him Glenn Rivers because like Doc is such an overrated coach, man. And we went from almost getting Ty Lue allegedly, and then we get Doc Rivers. Like he doesn't like playing young guys, and if they make a mistake, it's yank them. Don't even let him. But with B-ball Paul though, I'm wondering how he's going to put it all together on offense because defensively I could see the deflections, the versatility switching, even though he might be a little bit lighter for a big. But like offensively, even in, Summer League and the G League, like he can score a lot. And obviously he's an impactful offensive player. I'm just wondering, he makes a lot of erratic decisions on that end of the floor still. Like he can put up numbers in both of those lesser leagues. But like, is he going to be able to control himself in a condensed role, as opposed to he's, the number one option on the Blue Coats, and he's the, obviously one of the number one option on the Summer League team? Because there's still some like refinement stuff I see on offense from him and shot selection stuff, and that's obviously byproduct of being the best guy on the team at that point. But I just wonder if he does have a role, if he will get a chance,
That's my thing. I don't know if he even gets the chance to show it. I actually think a role where he is like your go-to offensive player off the bench wouldn't be the worst thing because it would allow them to play similarly. Like the bench unit could play similarly to how the starting unit plays, which I think could be helpful for when those guys are eventually, hopefully in the playoffs, thrown into action next to Joel Embiid. They are familiar with how to play with somebody who likes to operate out of the post and likes to operate close to the basket.
If I see another all bench lineup in the playoffs, I'm gonna throw myself out a window.
I'll just shut it off. I'll drive to Philadelphia myself and arrest Doc Rivers. I mean, I can't do it. He should have been fired after this postseason. They couldn't because they were still paying Brett Brown, and they would have been paying two coaches that were no longer coaching the team.
And this is why ownership needs to sell the team, because who in the hell would do a backwards ass thing like hire the coach first and then hire the GM? And I understand the circumstances played out that way, but like, I want to see what Coach Daryl Morey had. We had Monty Williams and I'm forgetting his name.
Udoka?
Ime Udoka in the building the last 2 seasons. And where are they now?
And currently they have Sam Cassell on their coaching staff.
Yep.
So to me, the next coach is sitting right there on the bench. Just arrest Glenn Rivers middle of the game and let Sam Cassell be the coach. Problem solved.
What are your feelings on Shake Milton?
I don't know. He's too inconsistent. I've seen it too many times in the postseason. I feel like it's only like twice, and it feels like too many times. He just he disappears in the postseason, and he's not reliable. I can't rely on Shake Milton. That was another big problem with the team. The team last year was built around the idea that Shake Milton was going to take a step forward as your sixth man, and he didn't do that. So
he did it for a month, and that was it.
Month
and
to start the season.
I'm pretty sure it hinged on the fact that Doc Rivers saw Shake Milton cook the Clippers the year before when Doc Rivers was coaching the Clippers, and he was like, "Oh wow, this point guard could be really good."
It's a pretty good impression.
Thank you. I can't believe we're going to end the podcast on this, but are you expecting anything from one-time enemy of the process and Joel Embiid, Andre Drummond? Do you think he's an upgrade over Dwight Howard, first off?
Potentially. He's a better rebounder than Dwight Howard. I'll give him that. He's still one of the best rebounders in basketball.
Yeah, he's better than Dwight at missing layups and getting his own offensive rebound and missing it again and getting the offensive rebound. He's good at that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's probably a wash. In my eyes, it's a wash. You didn't get better. You didn't get worse at that backup 5 position, but you didn't need to be better than Dwight Howard. I thought he was fine. So if you get fine out of Andre Drummond, that's cool.
Yeah, that's how I feel about Drummond too. There was like a month with the Cavaliers last year where, Drummond was active with his hands because he has quick hands and all that stuff. And the same shit we heard in Detroit where Drummond tried for a month and a half, 2 months, and then, bristled when his role was decreased and stuff. And then did that with the Lakers. He took the minimum. So it's not like the Sixers lose anything here. If Drummond doesn't work out, they could just cut him. But man, what a downfall from what was really like literally before the playoffs started last year. I was optimistic. I was talking my shit, with my friends. I was like,
me too.
The tanking worked. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. All this, I still believe that, by the way. Like the definition of the process, like it worked, and people need to just get over that and get out of their feelings about the morals of winning and losing. Think of the children. Oh my God. But it sometimes stuff doesn't work out. But I could tell you, as somebody who has watched this team for going to be 30 years or 22 years, because I started remembering the Sixers when I was like 7 or 8. The Iverson finals run obviously sticks in my head, and I remember watching all those games in the playoffs that year. But out of all in my entire time watching this team, these last 4 years shockingly have been the best era of Sixers basketball for me. As crazy as that sounds.
The last thing I want to say before we go, because you brought up on a high last year, I felt pretty good about the team after they had lost to Toronto. I thought they were trending in the right direction. And the one thing this is what I want to close on. If I've learned anything over the last 6 months of this team essentially chose Ben Simmons and Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler, and that was a mistake. They should not have done that. That was the wrong decision by Elton Brand at the time.
Elton Brand. He was the GM. There was that brief report that was, obviously it was refuted the minute the Timberwolves made Sachin Gupta, former Sixer front office member, the GM after the whole Rosas debacle. There was that brief report where the Timberwolves were really interested in Elton Brand, and I was like, oh my God. Like, if that happened, and I remember going on Reddit and the Timberwolves subreddit to see what their reaction was, and they're just like, why can't anything normal happen with this franchise?
Relatable.
And relatable. That's what I was going to say. And I was like, I asked the same damn question about the Sixers every summer. But, the Sixers are always going to be weird. It's our weird, dumb team. And, I guess we accept it for better or worse. But final prediction, actually. Where do you think the Sixers wind up in the East in terms of seeding? What is the outlook you see for this team, Mr. David Arroyo?
That's a wonderful question. I'm going to put them ahead of the Heat because I've already called the Heat fraudulent, so I got to stick to my guns on that one.
Always got to stick with your take.
I think you're probably right that they end up being better than the Bulls. So I'm trying to seed them in my head.
You really like the Bulls.
I do, but I think they probably end up being better than the Bulls slightly. I think they're fighting in that 4 to 6 range.
Oof.
So I'll give an official prediction that they're the 5 seed. No, I won't do that to myself. I say they're the 4 seed, just ahead of the Celtics, or like a game ahead of the Celtics. Like those are the 2 teams fighting, and I think it's just going to be Joel Embiid. Like they still have no answer for Joel Embiid. Like washed Al Horford is not it. So I think they'll be fine. I think they end up being a 4 seed, but to me, Atlanta's better than them. Milwaukee's better than them. Brooklyn is better than them. And
I agree.
Unfortunate.
I think they're going to be the 4th seed. I think
second round exit.
Yeah. I am interested to see what they look like in the playoffs because they can at least have more avenues to score offensively, but defensively, Maxey and Seth Curry hunting season. That's what it's going to be. But we'll see when we get there.
I feel like a coward saying they're going to be the 4 seed. I kind of want to rescind and just say they're going to be the 1 seed so I can,
so you can go back and look at this and be like, hey, I clip this clip from the Sly Hooper podcast. This is what I said and put it on Twitter. Yeah. I feel you.
I can't say it because I don't believe it.
You wanted to put him at the 5th seed. I could see it in your eyes.
I did. I refuse to put them below the Celtics though, because that just means I'm going to have an unenjoyable basketball season, and I need to enjoy it even a little bit.
It's tough because it's like I hate my team right now, but it's like you kind of got to be realistic too. But the range of seeding they can finish at won't surprise me whatsoever. Joel Embiid can miss 25 games, and that could kill the season. Any one injury is going to be crucial, but
they're no worse than 8 or no worse than 7. I don't think there's 8 anything more than 7 teams better than them. Let me just make sure I'm right there. It's Milwaukee, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Boston, Miami, Chicago. So I have 6 teams that could be better than them. To me, they're no worse than the 7 seed. They're probably no better than the 2 seed. Say they have a great regular season, they're no better than a 2 seed to me. But like in your scenario, Embiid gets hurt. To me, they're still a play-in team because the East is so bad. But I don't.
Well, that's what I meant by tank the season, because a play-in is going to be a failure for this franchise no matter what. But
maybe it gets Doc Rivers fired though. Let's look on the bright side.
Yeah. There's always got to be a silver lining. We are known for the fan base is known for finding silver linings with this dumb team, but
nobody hates the Philadelphia 76ers more than Philadelphia
fans.
Exactly. We go out on that note.
Yes. On that note, Mr. David Arroyo, you can catch him and his co-host Tom Shively on the podcast. There is a lot going on. I want to say there is a lot going on podcast, but that just sounds weird, so I have to switch it a little bit. But it's a good podcast. They're currently watching The Wire also, and they're doing Talgo TV, which I started resuming the 5th season of The Wire because I had to break it up because I didn't want to, finish it all instantly. But I'm back on the 5th season again. The Wire is incredible. I'm sure you've you and Tom are enjoying yourselves. Also watching the third season's a masterpiece.
Hey, you got to listen to Talgo TV for all our wire takes. I give them out nowhere
else
on Talgo TV. And that includes where it ranks. We will, by the end of this season, each of us will say where it ranks in our all-time shows. Spoiler alert, it is a contender for me for one of the best shows ever.
Oh yeah, it's in my top 3. I'll give my wire take on this podcast. But today is not the time for that. David, thank you for joining the show. Thank you for musing about the Sixers with me. And we'll check in with you on the season because I'm sure some more stuff will develop down the road. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot to David Arroyo for joining me on the show and basically venting our frustrations about the Philadelphia 76ers. It was a fun episode, long episode, much needed episode, and hopefully it will be the last time that I have to talk about Ben Simmons, at least for the next few weeks. Please, so help me God. But the podcast doesn't stop there. We got Evan Damerel on the show tomorrow to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers because I think they're one of the more interesting teams, to say the least, in the Eastern Conference. Not that I think that they will be a huge playoff contender or anything like that, but they are still interesting nonetheless, and I couldn't think of a better person than my good friend Evan Damerel to talk about the Cavs. So stay tuned for that episode, and then we got a few more guests coming down the road, and we're going to be previewing some teams. Stay tuned for the Cavs preview tomorrow with Evan. Thank you for listening. Spread the word if you can. Leave a 5-star review. Leave a comment if you want. Thank you for listening to the podcast, as always. And until next time, deuces.